Okay, hello everyone. Um, my name is Aditi, and I am excited to be here with you all answering any questions that you might have after my presentation. I think, morning for you, now evening for me. I see a lot of comments here, and I'm just slightly nervous to be here. But that's a look at the cards that I made in the presentation. So I'm just showing it to you up close there. I love mixed media art, and I really like using all those techniques and creating cards and spreading the cheer for mixed media. So, hello everyone, good morning. Hi, Tiffany, that's a name I recognize. Hi, Tracy, um, everybody. Thank you, Tiffany. So, okay, that's the first question there. What's my favorite mixed media technique? Honestly speaking, I love splattering. It's not a mixed media technique per se, but using my Lindy's magicals and creating backgrounds, using them to color elements for the projects, that's something I really enjoy doing, and just going free with the colors. So that movement, the watercolor movement with the pigment powders, that. And another thing that I enjoy is layers. So I'm all about layers, splatter and layers. Yes, Tiffany is also a splatter fan. Yes, Tiffany is not a glitter fan, but I am. I love glitter and sparkle as well in my cards. So that's something I would like to add as well. But yeah, just mixing up techniques, layers, like I said, layering products and creating dimension. Like you can see here, the depth and dimension that I've created. I'm a huge fan of that. So yeah, that's something I can share about that. Plus, I did plan to show a quick demo and put together a card as well today while I'm here. So we'll get to that. Um, what mixed media techniques work well together? Okay, that's the next question. So the thing is, mixed media is as simple as mixing different mediums, right? So be it your colors, be it texture pastes, embossing powders, and also the materials, so stamps, stencils. I don't think we can really go wrong. The key being we dry between layers. And so it is just about that. But too many layers can also get really messy. It can get bulky. So I always like to limit in the sense of, okay, what product am I going to use? Am I focusing on stamps majorly and a few dyes? Or in this case, it was the colors, the Lindy's creating the background and then working with the die cuts. And adding too many could have spoiled it, but I think that perfect blend of how much to add is what is important. So that's the way I look at it. Sometimes just adding texture paste and color and then throwing in a focal element works well. So there is no, I would say, formula to it, but I think it's just about the elements that you pick and the mediums that you mix together. I hope that answers it. Uh, when you're working with non-traditional Christmas colors, how do you make sure they're still festive? I like that question. I think I do that with the elements. I pick the right elements, and so in this case, you can see the snowflakes. This is a very non-traditional color combo, but just adding the winter elements makes this festive. Again, it also is the sentiment when you bring in that sentiment with the offbeat color combo, but add the sentiment and that element, be it in the form of a stamp or a die cut, it just brings in that festive vibe. And that's exactly what I thought I would show today in the demo. So I'm just going to set these cards aside, and as I answer questions, I'm also going to quickly just use my Lindy's and do a little bit of coloring so you can see them in action. My top favorite Lindy's colors, Tiffany, that's a tough one. But I can say that the new tea and crumpets shakers are my absolute favorite right now. I am just enjoying using these bottles. I love the Spill the Tea Teal, the Lizzie's Cuppa Tea Teal, those two. And there is one more, I think, yeah, let me show you the swatch, the Dunka Biscuit Blue Green. That's that's an absolutely stunning color, so I love these. Apart from that, I love Martian Magenta. Then there is Sweet Violet Teal. So anything with shimmer is my favorite, but and I'm a huge purple fan, so teals and purples, those are my absolute favorites. Oh, thank you, Misty. I am glad that you enjoy those. So I'm just going to show you, when did I start crafting and doing mixed media? It's been a decade now. I started mixed media art. Yeah, it's been a decade now. I quit my job as a special educator in the school because it was exhausting. So I have worked in clinics. I have worked as a therapist with children with special needs. And then my last job was at a school, and I needed a break. So I quit. And then my mom's an artist, she's a fine artist. So with my mom, I just got into art. And I don't know, she was the one who introduced me to mixed media art as well. And there was no looking back from that day, I would say. See, that's just the shimmer and that sparkle live. Tell us a must have element on your cards, please. Nunu, that's again a difficult one, but I think for me, it would be colors, like the way I use colors. That's a must have element, either Lindy's or inks, the way I use inks and play with colors itself. And apart from that, I must have splatter. Splatter answers that. Splatter is a must for me. Without splatter, I feel like no card is complete, or no project for that matter is complete. So that, and of course, then depending on what I'm playing with, I love using stamps. I really love using stamps. So that too. How do I finish the insides of my cards, Misty? Actually, I like to really make coordinated envelopes instead of working on the inside of the card. So I don't particularly focus on the insides of the cards, because right now all the cards that I make, either my friends or family like buying them to sort of give them a head, and I'm just exploring other options, but I leave the insides blank so that they can be personalized depending on the needs of the card giver. So I don't really focus, but I do create coordinated envelopes by just adding an element from the card. Say, for example, I don't have it handy right now, but say in this case, I would just use a snowflake and add that on the envelope as well. um Okay, interested in mixed media but never known where to start. Erica, I'm not sure if you already are a card maker and if you own supplies, whatever you have. Anytime you're going to mix two or three mediums, that becomes mixed media. So if you use your inks in, say, a way of using them as watercolors, and then you dry and then bring in a stencil and use your inks again, or use a stencil and add texture paste, that becomes mixed media. So I think that just knowing that helps. Personally, I did learn from various artists. YouTube was a good place for me to start off with. I have friends here on the chat, so Nuneka, Tiffany, everybody has fantastic videos and classes. I also, I mean, on my website have classes that are going to soon be listed, so that helps as well. But I would say to begin with, just watch our YouTube videos, anybody's YouTube videos, and mix up mediums, and that's about it. And be ready to get messy. But then, that one, Latika, this I am not too sure. I mean, what is it called? I really don't know. This was something, a gift from my sister-in-law. This is from Color Bar, so you know you can go and find it there. It's a lime green, but I don't know what it's called. So that I just want to quickly show you is a look at the Lindy's in action. I have used butter the bread blue and have a scone heather. These are the latest shakers, and they come with that cap to just sprinkle the powder and, like you saw, just spraying water. Uh, do I have a product recommendation for beginners in mixed media? Just a good paper. Start off with a good paper. You need heavyweight paper. You need either a mixed media paper or a watercolor paper, because you are going to be adding a lot of mediums and textures, and it only makes sense to have a good paper so that it can take all your mediums and not sort of, what would I say, dampen the paper, so it stays intact. I would say investing in a good paper is the key, and then use what you have. Like I think answered to Erica, use your inks. You say distress inks, play with them in a watercolor fashion. Use your stencil, maybe buy a texture paste so that you can add dimension with that. If not a texture paste, and if you have embossing powders, you can use your stencil with the embossing ink and sprinkle embossing powders. That adds another medium and texture. So I hope that answers your question. So I'm just going to set this aside, and I have another panel here. Thank you for time as a teacher for children. Oh, thank you, Tracy. I cherish that time. I still work as a therapist though. My day job is that I work as a healer and therapist. So I do provide services, therapeutic services to now not just children but adults also. So that are okay. No, this is Tim Holtz, I think, distress spray bottle. It's just from Ranger, the normal Tim Holtz spray bottle. I don't use anything else fancy. In fact, even just the hairspray bottles work well. And I just want to show you, this is a combination with the two teals, and it's just fabulous. I have used some products from Alex Siberia, and that's their sparkly cover dye. And after this piece dries, what I did was just run it through and die cut that, and that just makes for a perfect background, a perfect mixed media background for a card. And I have some elements already here, the sentiments, Christmas sentiments. And I want to add, especially with my class now, we were talking about elements and how to make them festive earlier, how to use non-traditional colors, and I'm adding non-traditional elements but make them festive. So I have the garden tweets dye here, and this is more spring vibe, but I'm choosing the bird. And I just want to show you that by changing the colors itself, you can make it more festive to fit with the vibes of your holiday card. This paper, let me just tell you. So I am using cold press. This is cold press paper. So this is more local that I get here in my stationery shop. And it's cold press paper. This is 300 GSM. I use this a lot because it's already cut to A6 size and it just makes it very easy. But apart from this, I like using Canson, I like using hand mule paper, I use the bamboo paper, the mixed media paper, as well as watercolor paper. I am also absolutely in love with Alt News watercolor paper. And let me just grab that to tell you about it. That is cold pressed as well and 300 GSM, but I love it because this is 100% cotton. So the feel that I get after using this is just, it's amazing. Yay, yes, the shakers are amazing. You will love them, I'm sure. And you saw how I what is the best way to set the lindies? I didn't get you, Tracy. I mean, do you mean storing your lindies or oh, set your lindies like so that the pigment doesn't move? Is that what you mean? I think that's what you mean. Um, Honestly, for cards and stuff, like you don't need anything, just water and let it dry. Also using, I use my heat tool in between layers if I'm in a rush, and that just helps it set there. I don't necessarily do anything else apart from when I am creating like an altered piece, home decor piece, which I want to display openly. This was a tip I learned from my friend Nuneka. The distress micro glaze works really well by just rubbing on the surface and then cleaning it off with a light soft fabric. That just makes sure that your lindies is set. So for paper projects, I don't really set it. I hope that answers your question. How does lindies compare to other powders? Honestly, I have always used lindies. I have been a fan of lindies for a decade, ever since I started mixed media. What I particularly love is the shimmer when you're using lindy's magicals and that shimmer. So I'm going to quickly show you. When it sets that two-toned effect and that shimmer, I am a huge fan of that. Also, a little powder goes a long way. So I actually, if I talk about my magicals, I still am using the first set of magicals that I bought or invested in like 10 years ago. I still have that. It still works. I mean, depending on your usage again, but a little color goes a long way. And the range of colors. I don't think there are other powders that have that vast range of colors. I mean, Lindy's magicals, the shakers, just the sifters, the magicals, all of that. The broad spectrum of colors they have is just incredible. So, can you use house? Yes, yes, Lisa. Yes, absolutely. So that just becomes more of upcycled altered mixed media art, but you can definitely use household items. When you say a bottle and you upcycle it and you add textures, that makes it mixed media. So you can, if that answers your question, you can. Can you tell me again what the blues I use on this one? So I used Lizzie's Kappa Tea Teal and Spill the Tea Teal. This is from the new Tea and Crumpets shaker set. Wonderful. I was wondering if there is a reason why you're not working on a separate board. Oh, no, there is no reason. Yeah, no, I'm not too, how do I put it? I don't worry too much about that with the curling. If my paper is good, like I have a sturdy paper, I just dry it and then I flip the paper, I dry it again, and I'm happy with that. Mostly because I am cutting that eventually. I'm using that for die cuts. But yes, if it is a background like this, once this dries, since it's a nice thick 300 GSM paper, and I'm going to use a cover die over it, you can see I don't have that much of a curl and a bend. So, I mean, yeah, it doesn't bother me. Yes, I do, Deb. I love my Derwent Inktense watercolor pencils. Absolute favorite. I really love those. And another thing I want to show you. So with the magicals, we did sprinkle and create that background. Now we can also paint. So on my palette, if I just mix the powder, yes, Tiffany, I am on all the social medias. I think the best thing is just to go on my website, which is aditimahajan.com, and all my links and everything is out there. Just makes it easy. I mean, in one place. So I am on Instagram, I am on Facebook, and soon my classes are going to be live on the website. So yeah, aditimahajan.com. Um, if someone can type that. So I'm just showing you how you can use these as paints, like as watercolor paints, by just mixing powder in the palette with water. And that just makes it a nice shimmery watercolor. So I'm just mixing both the colors I used on the background, and I'll paint the leaves with it. Um, I am seeing another question, I mean, in the chat about distress inks and distress oxides. And I just want to add, like, both distress inks and oxides, their properties are different. Distress inks are more vibrant, whereas oxides have that oxidized look. So you can use both on your projects, but you will get different results. The results are not going to be the same. So I have mixed that, and you can see I can just use it as a watercolor here on these die cut leaves. And I'm just using a brush and sort of dabbing them, and that works. And that's exactly what I've done. I've just watercolored this bird with a fine tip brush and done that. And I do that a lot with my stamps. I use my stamps and use Lindy's in this manner and watercolor them. And Deb had asked about watercolor pencils. I definitely then sometimes go in and add more detail with the pencils. Sometimes I use just the pencils. Anything really, depending on what I feel called to use intuitively that moment, I do that. So I just wanted to show you how they work as paints as well as just splatter and do that. And I want to show you just another card that I had made with the same exact elements, but that is not a festive vibe. It's more of a summer vibe. And I think that helps differentiate. So that's a look at that card. More of a summer, fresh vibe. And just by changing the colors, just by using the same element but changing the colors, making it more festive, more wintry, and adding that sentiment, if I add Merry Christmas, that helps. Yes, me too. I love it when I can squeeze the most out of my products and use them across seasons. So this is exactly what I have in mind, just the same thing, layer it in the same way, but it changes the vibes. And that's mixed media. I've just used different mediums, put together the elements, and that's what I wanted to show you. Mixed media doesn't have to be too many layers and too messy. It can just be that much. The last question I quickly see here, any must have tools to work with Lindy's? A fan brush if we are using just the magicals. So a fan brush helps sprinkle the powder, a paintbrush, and a mister bottle. So even a fine mister bottle like this is really helpful when working with Lindy's. Those are my must haves when working with Lindy's. Do you use mostly white paper for your card fronts? Not necessarily, no. I use other color papers as well. But then again, it depends. If I'm using Lindy's, like say on a black or a navy cardstock, and now my Lindy's are not going to show the way they do on white. On black or a navy, only the shimmer will stay up. So the result will be completely different. But then on that, I would use different mediums. I would use oxides, or I love using acrylic paint as well, so I would use that on a dark color cardstock. But I switch. I also just change the color of my cardstock by inking it up, adding different colored inks, if that makes sense. Do you use other adhesives to apply the cutout piece sets besides Elmer's glue? I use my local glue here. Like I use we have this, it's called fabric glue. It is a local glue that's easily available, and this is as good as the Nuvo glue. Anything that dries clear, I use that, and I use a lot of foam tape. I think more than liquid adhesive, I have rolls of foam tape because I love dimension. And this heavy body gel, like any gel medium, also helps. Different types of mixed media papers. So it is just the GSM and the texture. I go for watercolor papers, and I mostly use 300 GSM cold press, like I showed earlier. But I also love the Hanen bamboo paper, simply because again of the texture. So the difference is in the material used. Like the alt new watercolor paper, it is the bigger block is 100% cotton, so the effect is totally different. So for different project needs, I use different papers. But watercolor paper 300 GSM cold press, the bamboo paper by Hanen and the alt new big watercolor paper pad, these are my go-to papers. That's a good question. I think you have to experiment and see what you're comfortable with. But somebody else answered it, and I like buy just the paintbrushes for acrylic paints, and I use it with both watercolors and acrylics. And even just these water brush markers are good for watercolors. But most all my paintbrushes, everything that I use are actually fine art paintbrushes that people use for acrylics. No, darling, I haven't tried linen paper. I actually haven't found any here in India. So I will be on a lookout maybe next time to try that out. Yes, I am happy to answer any and every question you might have on the Facebook group. And thank you so much. I really had fun here, and I'm looking forward to your mix after the class.